Her cheek was still burning, a sharp, hot sting that spread across her face as if it refused to let the moment pass. Around her, silence stretched painfully long, the music awkwardly playing on in the background like a soundtrack no one remembered to turn off. Maya stood frozen. Hundreds of eyes stared at her from behind champagne glasses and designer dresses, their judgment louder than words. The slap had echoed across the grand ballroom like a gunshot, and now everything, her shame, the wine stain on the bride's dress, the flush in her throat, hung in the air, suspended. She could barely see through the tears welling up. The pain wasn't just physical. It was years of being overlooked, mocked, written off as the family failure, all crashing down in one public moment. She tasted blood, bit the inside of her cheek, and tried not to cry. Then she heard them. Footsteps. Measured, confident, utterly out of place in the chaos. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Her pulse skipped, panic rising in her chest. Maya lifted her head. Every head in the room turned too. The man walking through the reception hall wasn't part of this world, and yet somehow, he commanded it. His eyes were locked on hers, unreadable, and with each step the air in the room thickened. No one knew his name yet, but they were about to. Maya lived in a quiet corner of Portland, tucked away on the third floor of an old brick building where the stairs creaked and the walls were too thin. Her one-bedroom apartment was filled with second-hand furniture and the soft scent of lavender from the drawer liners her grandmother had once sent. Every morning she made coffee in a chipped blue mug, fed the stray cat that liked her windowsill, and drove her 10-year-old hatchback to the public library where she worked. The people who came in knew her by name. They liked how she remembered their favorite genres, how she smiled when handing them large print mysteries or children's picture books. She spent her days shelving returns, helping older patrons use the printer, and slipping quiet encouragement to anxious teens, trying to finish school projects. It wasn't glamorous, but it gave her peace. Family gatherings, though, were another story. Her relatives always looked at her the same way, like she was nice enough, but maybe a little sad. They asked the same questions every time. Still single? Still at the library? Still living in that same apartment? Their voices were polite, but their eyes carried pity. They didn't know. No one did. For 3 years, Maya had been married to Nathan, the man whose name occasionally trended in business magazines and tech headlines. He wore watches worth more than her yearly salary and ran a company with global offices. But when they were together, he was just Nathan, the man who made her laugh over burnt toast, the man who kissed her forehead before leaving for red-eye flights and left Post-its in her lunch bag. When they got married, it was just the two of them, a judge and 2 witnesses they barely knew. Maya had asked for something that most people would find impossible to understand. She didn't want the mansion. She didn't want the public title. She didn't want to be Mrs. Reed at the country club brunch. She wanted to keep being Maya, the woman in the jeans with a tote bag full of overdue paperbacks and a heart full of her own kind of quiet rebellion. Nathan thought she was crazy at first. He tried to offer compromise after compromise, but in the end he understood. He loved her not because of what she looked like on paper, but because she saw past what he did, because she saw him, and he saw her. Not for what she wasn't, but for everything she was. She never regretted that decision, not even once. But standing there at that wedding with wine dripping down silk and shame clinging to her skin, a small voice whispered something different. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe being invisible had protected her for too long. Maybe the world needed to see who she really was. Not because of him, but because she was done pretending her light had to stay small. The envelope was cream-colored with gold lettering and smelled faintly of perfume. Maya knew it was from Vanessa before she even opened it. Inside was a formal invitation to her cousin's wedding, complete with calligraphy and an RSVP card that felt more like a status check than a celebration. She stood by her kitchen counter, the invitation in her hands, and remembered the sleepovers when they were 10. Back then, they'd made up dances in the basement and whispered secrets under blankets. But time had a way of splitting paths, and Vanessa's took her to law school luxury gyms and wine tastings, while Maya's led to late-night book returns and frozen meals in front of documentaries. The next Saturday, she walked through 3 different stores before she found something that felt right. It was a navy dress with a modest cut, small floral pattern and a price tag of $43.99. She held it up in the mirror of the thrift-style shop, smoothing it over her hips, telling herself it was enough. Her phone buzzed as she left the store. It was her Aunt Cheryl voice, sweet and tight like a ribbon pulled too hard. She said she was just checking in, wanted to be sure Maya knew the event would be upscale. Lots of important guests. Sophisticated families. She didn't say don't embarrass us, but the words lived in the spaces between every sentence. Maya hung up and sat on the edge of her bed, the dress still in the plastic bag beside her. Her stomach turned. She could stay home. Send a gift. Make up an excuse about work or illness. No one would miss her at that wedding, not really. But something in her refused to disappear. She deserved to be there just as much as anyone else. So she pulled the dress from the bag, peeled off the tag, and hung it up near her closet with a kind of quiet defiance. She wasn't going to show up to impress them. She was going, because she wouldn't keep shrinking, just to make others feel taller. The hotel looked like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Marble floors polished to a mirror-shine, chandeliers dripping with crystals, and flower arrangements so big they needed their own support staff. Maya stepped through the entrance with her thrifted navy dress and a clutch she'd borrowed from a friend, already feeling a size too small for the space she was walking into. Everywhere she looked, people sparkled. Gowns clung like second skin, and tuxedos fit like they were sewn in silence by someone named after a city. The air smelled like expensive perfume and carefully curated appetizers. Maya caught her reflection in a gold-framed mirror near the coat. Check. And adjusted her pearl earrings, the ones her grandmother left her. She looked neat, quiet, appropriate. Not stunning, not impressive. Just fine. Her place card was tucked at table 19. It sat near the back of the room next to the door to the kitchen where waiters in white jackets moved like shadows. She recognized no one at her table. A few of them smiled politely before turning back to their conversations, which mostly centered on home renovations, hedge funds, and ski trips. Someone mentioned a new fitness coach who didn't work with just anyone. Maya sipped her water and nodded when appropriate. From her seat, she could barely see the couple. Vanessa floated across the room in a gown that glittered like champagne. Her new husband stood tall, the kind of man who looked like he'd never had to borrow anything. Their laughter reached Maya like a distant song she used to know the words to. At one point, she overheard someone at the next table ask who the woman in the navy dress was. The answer was delivered in a hushed tone, followed by the kind of laugh that tried to sound light but landed sharp. Maya stared at her plate. The salad was beautiful, layered with things she couldn't pronounce and didn't ask about. But even as the sting settled in her chest, she tried to take in the music. The string quartet was good. The room was warm. She liked how the lights made everything glow. There was still beauty here, even if she didn't feel like she belonged inside it. So she kept her back straight, folded her napkin neatly, and told herself the truth. She had every right to be here, even if no one else thought so, even if the room whispered otherwise. This wasn't their story to define. Not anymore. Maya reached across the table to gather a few empty glasses. It was instinct more than anything. No one had asked her to help. She just hated clutter and wanted to be useful in a place where she felt invisible. Her elbow nudged a stem. The moment she felt it wobble, her stomach dropped. The wine glass tipped slow at first, then faster, the deep red liquid leaping from the rim in a clean arc. It hit Vanessa squarely across the front of her dress. The stain spread like blood blooming on white silk. Gasps sliced through the air like sudden wind. The quartet kept playing, but every voice in the room stopped. Maya's heart punched her ribs. She stood motionless, gripping the back of the chair, her mouth slightly open. Her brain scrambled for words that didn't come fast enough. Vanessa looked down at her dress, then up at Maya. Her face twisted. It was the kind of anger that builds in layers over years. This wasn't just about the wine. This was about every quiet judgment, every memory of being the one people whispered about. The slap came without warning. Maya heard the crack before she felt the sting. Her head snapped sideways. For a second, the room tilted. Her hand flew to her cheek. It burned. Silence poured into the space like concrete. She could hear the clicking of phone cameras, the soft shuffle of people turning in their chairs. No one spoke. They didn't have to. Their eyes did all the talking. Vanessa stood in front of her, breathing hard. Her dress ruined her expression, flushed with fury. She shouted something about cost, about how this was the most important day of her life, how Maya had always been a mess. Maya wasn't listening anymore. Her ears buzzed, her eyes stung. She wanted the ground to open. She wanted to run, but her legs felt cemented to the floor. She could feel her pulse in her teeth, her jaw, her fingertips. Her breath caught short and shallow. Somewhere a server stepped back quietly. Someone whispered something cruel but soft, just loud enough to be heard. Maya turned her eyes to the chandelier, blinking hard. She would not cry. Not here. Not for them. She tasted blood, bit the inside of her cheek without meaning to. Her hand stayed pressed to her face, trying to hide the heat. Her mind searched for an escape route, a sentence, anything to make it better. Nothing came. It wasn't just the slap. It was the years behind it. The way her family had always talked about her in past tense, like she never quite arrived, like she was an unfinished version of what she should have been. The librarian, the renter, the one who didn't matter enough to be considered important. Now she had a spotlight, for the worst reason. Phones stayed raised. The expressions around her blurred. Everyone looked sorry. But not for her. They looked sorry that it happened during the wedding. Sorry it might ruin the event. Not sorry that she had been humiliated in the most public way possible. A waiter moved to clean the spill. Vanessa snapped at him too. Someone laughed nervously. Maya felt her fingers go numb. She wished Nathan were there, not to save her but to anchor her, to look at her the way he did when she forgot who she was. But he wasn't supposed to be. He was across the world, on a plane or in a meeting, somewhere far from this cold, echoing room. Maya took a step back, her shoes scuffing the polished floor. She felt very small, very exposed. Every eye in the room tracked her movement like she was a show. And then somewhere behind her footsteps, confident, steady, familiar. Her stomach flipped. Her heart forgot how to beat. She didn't turn right away. The air shifted. The room noticed. Something was coming. And for the first time that evening, Maya let herself hope. Just a little. The sound of the doors opening barely registered at first. People were still recovering from the slap, still murmuring behind hands, still deciding if it was safe to return to their cocktails. Then they saw him. A tall man in a dark charcoal suit stepped into the reception hall like he owned every square foot of marble under his shoes. His hair was neatly styled, his jaw set, his expression unreadable. He didn't look around to admire the venue or find his seat. He moved with a sense of purpose that made the air feel tighter. One by one, conversations died. People turned, phones lowered. There was something about him that shifted the room, not loud, not dramatic, just power, quiet and absolute. Maya knew that walk. Every line of his body told her what mood he was in. The measured steps, the straight shoulders, the way his gaze swept the space like a surgeon scanning a patient. This wasn't Nathan, her husband, who forgot his keys and left notes in her lunchbox. This was Nathan Reed, the man who made billion-dollar calls before breakfast and didn't blink when rooms fell silent. She couldn't breathe. Her stomach twisted. He was supposed to be in Tokyo or Dubai, somewhere very far from this disaster. Not here, not in this room filled with gossip and bad lighting and people who had just watched her fall apart. He walked toward her, not fast, not slow, just steady, like nothing in the room could stop him. Vanessa was still fuming, waving her arms, trying to salvage the mood with forced laughter and dramatic expressions. She hadn't seen him yet. Most people hadn't figured it out. They just knew something had shifted. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears. Her eyes found his, and everything inside her screamed, "Not here. Not now. Please leave. Please let me handle this on my own. Let me disappear quietly like I always do." But he didn't turn around. He didn't hesitate. She felt her knees weaken as he came closer. His eyes locked on her cheek, on the red mark that still burned. For a second the mask slipped and she saw it. Fury. Not the loud, reckless kind. The cold, controlled kind that only showed when someone crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. No one recognized him yet. Not really. He looked like someone important. Someone used to private jets and custom suits. But not like someone who belonged at a wedding for a family that had always tried to hide its disappointments. He reached her, stopped, stood in the space between Maya and the crowd like a shield no one had seen coming. She could see people start to whisper, "Who is he? What's going on? Why is he looking at her like that?" Maya tried again with her eyes. "Please, don't do this. Don't make this worse. Let me shrink. Let me fade." Nathan didn't move. He didn't speak. He just stood beside her still and steady. And with each second that passed, the silence got heavier. The wedding, the drama, the noise, all of it collapsed into a single question that hung in the air. Who is he, and why does he look at her like she matters? Nathan's voice broke the silence like a stone dropped into still water. He didn't raise it. He didn't need to. It carried low and steady across the room. "I'm wondering who you think you are hitting my wife." A gasp rippled through the guests. It moved like a wave, slow then fast, sweeping from table to table. Phones came up again, but now they weren't aimed at Maya. They were aimed at him, at them, at the impossible headline forming right in front of everyone. Maya's Aunt Cheryl dropped her champagne flute. It hit the tablecloth and rolled, but no one reached to stop it. Vanessa froze. Her husband blinked twice, confused, then looked at Nathan like he was trying to place a face from a magazine. Maya felt her spine stiffen. Her ears buzzed. But this time it wasn't humiliation. It was something else. Something sharper. Something like power. Vanessa stammered. Tried to speak. Tried to make sense of what she'd just heard. Maya doesn't have a husband. She never said anything. She works in a library. She lives in that crumbling place near the highway. Nathan turned to her, still calm, and pulled his phone from his pocket. With the flick of his thumb, he brought up a photo. He held it out. A courthouse wedding. Maya laughing, her head thrown back. Nathan in a simple suit, not the kind he wore to board meetings, but still sharp. They looked impossibly happy. The room stared. A man near the bar pulled up an article on his screen and whispered something to the woman beside him. She squinted, then gasped again. It spread. The realization. The math. The truth. Nathan Reed, CEO of Reed Systems, one of the youngest tech billionaires in the country, worth over $3 billion and somehow married to the quiet, invisible woman who just spilled wine and got slapped by the bride. Maya saw it happen in real time. The shift, the recalculating, the way people rewrote her identity without asking her anything. One second she was a stain on a dress. The next, she was someone whose hand was held by the most powerful man in the room. Vanessa's face drained of color. Her new husband leaned in and muttered something sharp. She stared at Maya like she'd grown a second head, like she couldn't be real. Maya felt no joy in that moment, no smugness, only a strange, hollow ache. Nathan didn't let go of her hand. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. Everything about the way he stood said enough. This is my wife. This is the woman I chose. And if you didn't see her before, that's your failure, not hers. The room didn't breathe. Maya stood still, holding the weight of their stares, their regrets, their confusion, and somehow, for the first time in her life, she didn't flinch. Maya didn't step forward. She didn't raise her voice or lift her chin in triumph. She simply stood where she was, her hand still in Nathan's, and looked at Vanessa. Her voice came out steady. No anger, no tremble, just truth. "I forgive you for the slap. I know you were upset. I know your dress mattered to you. That moment it hit hard, and maybe I reminded you of something you didn't want to see." Vanessa blinked, eyes wide, lips parted, but Maya didn't stop. "I don't forgive you for everything before that. For the years of quiet dismissal. For pretending I was small because my life didn't look like yours. For speaking to me like I was less. For looking right through me at every holiday, every dinner, every wedding like this one." A few people shifted in their chairs. Someone coughed. The weight of Maya's voice so calm and even settled over them like glass. "I chose this life. Not because I had no options, but because I knew who I was in it. I chose my apartment, my job, my quiet routines. It's not something I settled for. It's something I loved. Your opinions didn't shape that. They never did." Her gaze swept across the room. She didn't single anyone out. She didn't need to. Each person knew exactly where they fit in the story she had just laid bare. "I'm not here today to prove anything. But I'm done pretending I owe you silence. I'm done shrinking to make you comfortable. I never needed your approval, and now you know I never asked for it." Nobody spoke. Not even Nathan. He didn't need to. She wasn't asking for backup. She wasn't looking for applause. What she said didn't come from a place of revenge. It came from a place of freedom. Vanessa looked down. Her hands clutched the fabric of her stained dress like she could fold into it and disappear. Maya didn't watch her long. She had said what she came to say. Nothing more. Nothing less. And somehow that quiet grace shook the room harder than any angry outburst ever could. Maya stood still for a long moment, letting the silence settle. She could feel the air had changed. Not just in the room, but inside her. For years she thought staying quiet made her stronger, that disappearing into simplicity was how she kept control. But now she saw the truth. She had been hiding, not protecting, shrinking, not choosing. She looked up at Nathan. He wasn't asking her to be anyone else. He never had. And suddenly she knew it. She didn't need to keep secrets to be real. She didn't need to prove she wasn't chasing status. Her life was already hers. As they turned toward the exit, Maya didn't lower her head. She didn't rush. She walked slowly, Nathan beside her, her steps light. Not because of his presence, but because of her own. The same people who used to glance past her now watched closely. But it didn't matter anymore. She wasn't walking for them. She wasn't walking to teach them anything. She was walking for the girl who used to sit in the back seat at family dinners, for the woman who dressed down to keep from standing out, for the wife who quietly held a love too sacred to explain to anyone else. She wasn't here to impress. She wasn't here to explain. She was here, fully, finally, herself. Maya stepped into the sunlight outside and felt it hit her skin like something new. She had carried the weight of staying small for too long. Now she let it go. She didn't owe the world quietness to make it more comfortable. She would live simply, but never secretly again. Maya stepped out of the reception hall with Nathan beside her. The sun had dipped low, brushing the sky with orange and gold. Her fingers curled around his without thinking. His hand was warm, steady grounding. Behind them, the sounds of the wedding faded into a distant murmur. Laughter, clinking glasses, forced conversations. None of it reached her anymore. None of it could touch her now. She had once believed she had to stay small to feel safe. That modesty was protection. That if she spoke too loudly, if she shined too brightly, the world would crush her. So she kept her joy quiet, her success hidden, her love tucked behind closed doors. But walking beside Nathan now, she realized the weight had never been about keeping a secret. It had been about the fear that who she was wasn't enough, or maybe too much. She had lived in the shadow of others' opinions for so long she forgot what her own voice sounded like. Nathan squeezed her hand and didn't say a word. He never needed to. He had always seen her even when she struggled to see herself. As they reached the parking lot, she looked up at the fading sky and felt something shift inside. She wasn't just leaving a wedding. She was leaving behind every moment she had doubted her worth, every apology she had made for not fitting in. They reached the car. He opened the door for her like he always did. She slid into the seat, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't carry the day with her. She left it where it belonged, in the past. The world would go on whispering, but now she didn't need to listen. She had never been small. She had only forgotten how to stand in her own light.